Right now, millions of people are living a life that doesn't belong to them. They smile when they're breaking inside, say yes when everything in them screams no, and construct entire personalities built on what others expect them to be. They're the perfect employees, the agreeable friends, the obedient family members. But behind closed doors, they're completely exhausted. Not from working too hard, but from never being truly seen for who they actually are. Carl Jung had a name for this invisible prison, and in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to break free from it. What I'm about to share could fundamentally change how you see yourself and the world around you. Welcome to PsychVault X, where we explore the depths of human psychology and unlock the secrets to authentic living. Today we're diving into one of Carl Jung's most profound and life-changing concepts, the danger of living behind a mask and the transformative power of what he called authentic not caring. This isn't about becoming cold or indifferent to the world. It's about something far more revolutionary. It's about finally giving yourself permission to exist as you truly are, even if that means disappointing the people around you. If you've ever felt like you're playing a character in your own life, if you've ever wondered why success still feels hollow, or if you're exhausted from constantly adapting to everyone else's expectations, then everything you're about to hear was written specifically for you. Carl Jung recognized something that most of us spend our entire lives trying to avoid. We're all wearing masks. He called this mask the persona, and he understood it as a necessary tool for navigating society. We need these social faces to function in groups, to maintain professional relationships, to interact smoothly with strangers. The persona itself isn't the problem. The catastrophe begins when we forget we're wearing a mask at all. When the distinction between our authentic self and our social performance completely dissolves, we enter what Jung described as a state of profound psychological alienation. Think about this for a moment. How many versions of yourself do you present to the world? There's the professional you, polished and competent. There's the family you, playing whatever role was assigned to you in childhood. There's the social you, carefully curated to be likable and acceptable. But if someone were to ask you who you really are when all these performances stop, could you answer? For most people, that question is met with an uncomfortable silence because they genuinely don't know anymore. Jung saw this complete identification with the persona as a form of neurosis, a fundamental failure in psychological development. These are people who live entirely on a stage that never closes. They have a carefully rehearsed performance for every environment they enter. But beneath all that performance, there's a terrifying emptiness. They don't know who they are. They only know who they're supposed to be. Every action becomes calculated for approval. Every word is measured for its impact. Every expression is filtered through the question, will this make them like me? But why does this happen? Jung pointed directly to childhood as the origin of this psychological trap. No child is born needing universal approval. Watch a toddler and you'll see pure, unfiltered authenticity. They scream when they're angry, cry when they're sad, laugh with their entire body when something delights them. But this beautiful authenticity doesn't last long. At some point, every child makes a devastating discovery. They realize that certain expressions bring affection while others bring withdrawal. They learn that love isn't unconditional. This is the moment of psychological fracture. When a child realizes they're only praised for certain behaviors, only embraced when they please, only heard when they're quiet, they begin reshaping their identity, no longer based on their inner truth, but on their performance. They discover that being fully themselves might be dangerous, so they choose survival over authenticity. They develop acceptable versions of themselves, carefully crafted masks that guarantee approval, protection, and love. And over the years, they forget there was ever a face beneath the mask. This is how the psychological chameleon is born. The adult who decades later still operates by the same terrifying code. I will only be loved if I please others. I will only be accepted if I adapt to their expectations. This adaptation isn't a conscious, rational choice. It's an emotional response to what felt like a survival threat in childhood. It's the wounded child within the adult, still desperately trying to avoid abandonment. Jung understood this as a profound wound to the developing self. When a child grows up in an environment where love is conditional, they don't develop an internal sense of worth. Instead, they develop what I call a social radar. Instead of asking themselves, "Who am I?" they learn to constantly ask, "Who do they need me to be?" Their internal compass stops pointing toward their own truth and starts spinning frantically around other people's expectations. This is where Jung's concept of authentic not caring becomes absolutely crucial. When Jung talks about the ability to not care, he's not advocating for cold indifference or selfish disregard for others. Jungian not caring is something entirely different. It's the hard-won ability to remain true to yourself even when that truth disappoints others. It's living from a validated internal center rather than being held hostage by external validation. The person who has achieved this rare psychological state can care deeply about others, can love profoundly, can contribute meaningfully to their community. But they do so from a place of choice rather than compulsion. They no longer need widespread approval to feel real or worthy. They can exist authentically even when they disappoint someone. This concept aligns perfectly with Jung's process of individuation, which is fundamentally about the birth of the authentic self. But this state doesn't magically appear. It must be cultivated through deliberate practice. Jung offers us concrete steps to develop this ability. Let me walk you through 7 transformative practices that can genuinely change your relationship with yourself and the world. The first step requires brutal honesty. You must consciously identify your multiple personas. Jung invites us to map the various masks we wear throughout our lives. Who do you pretend to be at work? What version of yourself do you present to your family? What aspects of your personality do you exaggerate when you want to be admired? This is the first essential cut, creating conscious separation between performance and essence. The second step becomes even more uncomfortable. You must track the motivation behind your actions with relentless honesty. Jung challenges us to constantly ask ourselves, am I doing this because I genuinely want to, or because I'm terrified of disappointing someone? This practice breaks that unconscious pattern and often reveals that even your most generous gestures are actually desperate attempts to avoid rejection. The third step is where theory becomes practice. Jung calls these the small betrayals of approval. This means saying no when everyone expects yes. It means canceling a commitment you only kept out of obligation. It means expressing an opinion you would normally hide to keep the peace. Each micro-rebellion is a psychological experiment. You discover that you survive the disappointment of others. The world doesn't collapse when you set a boundary. The fourth step involves dialoguing with your inner critic through what Jung called active imagination. This means personifying the internal voices that censor and judge you. Who is that voice calling you selfish when you prioritize your needs? Where did it come from? When you recognize that the voice limiting you isn't actually your own, you begin reclaiming your psychological sovereignty. The fifth step is perhaps the most frightening. Jung calls it the symbolic death of a false identity. Maybe you've always been the perfect child, the endlessly available friend, the impeccable professional. But what if you simply let that persona die? Jung taught that the birth of the authentic self requires the death of the inflated ego, the identity you built solely to be loved and accepted. The sixth step is strategic. Jung proposes creating what he called the ring of value. This is an exercise where you draw concentric circles to define the degree of importance different people have in your life. In the center, you place yourself and your non-negotiable values. In the next circle, the few people whose opinions you truly value. In the outer circles, everyone else. This map serves as a powerful antidote to the compulsion to please everyone. The seventh and final step is both dark and absolutely necessary. You must integrate what Jung called the shadow of selfishness. People who live to please others almost always have a powerful repressed shadow related to selfishness. Jung makes a crucial distinction between healthy self-interest and pathological narcissism. Asking yourself without censorship, if I could be completely selfish right now, what would I do, is a way to uncover authentic desires that have been suffocated under the morality of performance. These 7 steps aren't meant to be followed linearly. They're living practices that should be revisited cyclically throughout your life. Jung shows us that individuation isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a constant, ongoing process of becoming increasingly real. And the further this process advances, the less you need external approval. Not because you've become cold or indifferent, but because you've finally found something solid within yourself. There's a particular kind of suffering that doesn't show up on medical tests, but slowly consumes the soul from within. It's the suffering of living without a true self, of spending your days playing roles that seem right, while inside you accumulates a feeling of profound disconnection. This is what Jung called the tragedy of the unlived self. People trapped in this state often display chronic restlessness. No matter how many compliments they receive, how many goals they achieve, there's always this persistent sense that something crucial is missing. That something is the self. They don't live from an inner center, but like leaves being tossed by the wind, constantly reacting to external pressures, endlessly reshaping themselves to meet others' expectations. When the authentic self finds no space to exist, it begins manifesting in symptoms. Anxiety attacks with no apparent cause, persistent sadness that success can't touch, a feeling of being fake all the time. Jung saw this not as clinical pathology, but as a symbolic cry from the unconscious. The soul is desperately asking to be lived. But here's the profound truth. From the moment you decide to stop performing and start existing with all your contradictions and imperfections, something powerful happens. You begin reclaiming vital energy. No longer expending enormous resources to maintain an image, you can direct that energy toward living with genuine presence. Relationships transform, priorities naturally realign. And most importantly, a new capacity emerges to stand firm in your truth, even when it disappoints someone you care about. The authentic not caring arises naturally when the self begins taking root. Not as coldness, but as clarity. Not as isolation, but as integrity. You don't become indifferent to people. You become selective about where you invest your precious energy. You cease being a leaf and become a tree, flexible when necessary, but deeply rooted in your own truth. Becoming who you truly are comes at a cost, and it's not a small one. It requires disappointing people, breaking their expectations, abandoning roles that once guaranteed you applause and belonging. It demands that you cross through the visceral fear of rejection and discover that even so, you survive. But Jung was absolutely clear about this. Only when the inflated, conditioned ego dies can the authentic self finally be born. The journey of individuation is neither comfortable nor linear. It's made up of internal ruptures, facing your shadow, and making conscious choices every single day. The choice to speak your truth even when it's uncomfortable. The choice to be integral even when it disappoints. The choice to live from an inner center rather than an external reflection. If this video touched something deep within you, it's because you might be ready. Ready to start letting the masks fall away. ready to stop endlessly pleasing others, ready to finally exist as yourself. I want to hear from you in the comments below. What mask do you feel you need to abandon? Sharing your truth can be the first act of liberation. If this exploration of Jungian psychology resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to PsychVault X so you don't miss our upcoming deep dives into the human psyche. Your journey toward authenticity starts right now, and remember this above all else. You didn't come into this world to be loved by everyone. You came here to become who you really are.